When it comes to metaverse conversations, virtual reality is usually a term that's tossed around quite frequently and usually doesn't lag far behind the initial discussion. So stick around while we explore the idea of virtual reality, how it relates to a metaverse, and whether or not it's a requirement. What is up, guys? Welcome back to the Bull Combo. I hope you guys are doing great. I hope you're having a fantastic day. Today I'm coming at you guys with a conversation regarding VR and the metaverse. But before we get started, if you are liking the content you're seeing here, if you enjoy blockchain-based games, if you enjoy virtual land or metaverse conversations, consider subscribing to the channel, guys. I would really appreciate it, and it goes a long way to supporting me, supporting the content I bring you guys. And again, if you find value in it, do yourself the favor of subscribing and making sure to come back when I post new videos. Also, just a quick reminder, guys, that the NFT giveaway is still going, so if you haven't entered that already, make sure to watch the weekly Metaverse update that I posted last Friday. It'll give you all the entry steps, and then this Friday I'll be picking some winners to receive NFTs. All right, guys, so let's jump right into the topic of today's video. So like I mentioned, when the conversations arise regarding metaverses, quite oftentimes the term or the discussion of VR is something that kind of parallels that conversation, and it's something that the conversation generally seems to evolve into. But is VR as essential to the metaverse as some would have you believe? Let's explore that thought and the overall concept of a VR-reliant metaverse. So I think before we get started, a reminder of the definition of a metaverse is probably in order. So by definition, a metaverse is a virtual reality space in which users can interact with a computer-generated environment and other users. So with that definition, let's explore the idea of virtual reality when it comes to metaverses, whether or not it's required, whether or not it's a deal breaker, and what we can expect in the future. So the first thing to discuss when we talk about VR, and specifically metaverses, is the graphical limitations that currently come into play with VR. Now, granted, there are very high-end virtual reality headsets on the market right now, but the most consumer accessible headsets, the Oculus Quests, the HTC Vives, especially the Oculus Quest 2, which is being pushed really hard by Facebook right now. Each of these devices seem to be limited in terms of their graphical and performance ability. The graphics aren't on par with a PC, a Mac, consoles, or even a Nintendo Switch. And I think right now this kind of highlights the fact that we still are technologically limited by the tools that we have to make a fully immersive metaverse experience work from a VR perspective. Now, you've probably heard this before. You've probably heard variants of this conversation or of this topic being mentioned, that Ready Player One's a ways out, and things like The Matrix are a ways out. But I don't think it's necessarily for the specific reasons that people think, because as a whole, we have a lot of individual technology that can accomplish a lot of those things. From a graphical perspective, obviously, VR headsets have a long way to go before they rival that of consoles and PCs. And from a challenge perspective, this is probably the easiest challenge to overcome, because again, while the technology exists, it's just about figuring out how to get it into a small enough package to fit on someone's face. So I think once they establish that, or once they figure out how to do that and take all of the components that you would see in a high-end gaming PC, for example, and be able to fit those into a VR headset, I think once that's done, we'll at least be at the technological level capable of producing an experience or a graphical experience on par with what we would expect from a VR metaverse. And that leads me to my next point, and that is adoption and accessibility. And while VR is cool and still holds a ton of potential, it's still very much a niche concept. Now, many people are becoming more and more familiar with virtual reality and virtual reality headsets, largely thanks to platforms like Facebook really bringing it into the consumer level and presenting it to the consumer as something that's an option, as something that's out there. And before large companies were really pushing this, obviously VR was not really accessible at the consumer level at all. So, like them or not, in many ways, we have a company like Facebook to thank for really progressing the idea of VR being a mainstream concept. And while they are pushing it hard, it still obviously lags far behind consoles, mobile, and PC in terms of platforms or mediums that users prefer to utilize when interacting with a game. And while VR seems like the ultimate resolution to a gaming experience, I think there are a lot of people who forget that there are many people who can't utilize VR for a variety of reasons. Whether that be a handicap or a personal issue, motion sickness, claustrophobia. There's a lot of different reasons why people can't utilize VR headsets right now and probably never will be able to. And that part specifically is very important, because if we're trying to create something that needs to be accessible by everybody, then things like motion sickness, which are a very common thing, that can't be a barrier in the way of trying to access your platform. If you want everyone to access and utilize and enjoy your platform, you can't restrict it by making it a requirement that people have a specific piece of very restrictive technology in order to enjoy or engage with said experience. So I think it's very important that we remember there's a lot of people that can't use VR for, again, a variety of reasons, whether that be health related or preference, personal preference, or just people that have a general uneasiness of having their view of the outside world completely restricted. Then you add in the price, and while prices have come down quite a bit, it's still pretty expensive to buy a VR headset just for the VR aspect of it. Oculus Quest 2, for example, I believe at its cheapest is $300 for the lower end storage model, which isn't that expensive, but it is expensive when you think about the fact that it's a very unique and specific platform that only has a very limited number of uses right now. Your 60-year-old or 70-year-old grandparent might not find much use of an Oculus Quest 2 headset because those experiences might just be beyond what they're interested in. Or it might not carry the types of platforms, applications, or games that would be useful to a person of that age group. And so I really do think that, again, VR is very limiting in many of its aspects. And that leads me to the main point of this video, and that is that I personally do not believe VR will be the medium that we utilize in the metaverse long term. Oftentimes when we think of a metaverse or talk about the metaverse, we draw the Ready Player One comparison. And while I think that's a great comparison to the overall concept, I think there's a few things that we forget here. And the first thing is that Ready Player One works great from a Hollywood perspective, but reality is often much different. And there is definitely an innate draw to the outside world. I mean, the reality is that people are drawn to the outside world. People are drawn back to reality. And I mean, as just an example, if you wanted to go to Walmart right now, you could probably find an Oculus Quest 2, but you'd be pretty hard up trying to find a canoe or a kayak because they're sold out everywhere right now because people are out and about and people are enjoying outside. And so this is one reason why I think that the Ready Player One comparison is a bit exaggerated and a bit Hollywoodized. And I do really think that a better comparison or a better movie, if you were going to use Hollywood examples, would probably be Minority Report. Because I feel like that level of engagement and that level of accessibility is much more secondhand than a VR headset. So let me elaborate on my thought here. VR headsets are extremely restrictive. You can only utilize them when you're not moving, or if you're moving in a very confined space. You can't utilize them while you're walking through an airport. I mean, you could, but you'd probably hurt yourself or somebody else. You can't wear a VR headset while you're on a run. You probably aren't going to be walking through Disney World with an Oculus Quest 2 on your face. So while VR is great for transporting a person to a place, it's very limited in what it can be utilized for when a person is in motion. And people like to be in motion. And that is why I do believe that augmented reality and not VR is going to be the medium that really pushes us into that full-on metaverse experience. And I kind of liken VR to BlackBerries. If you think about the smartphone experience, when we were trying to transform that smartphone experience, the BlackBerry was very much a bridge style device. It bridged the gap between flip phones with buttons and the touchscreen phones that we would eventually know and love. And I do very much think that VR is a very similar example of that right now. It is the first iteration of that next level of technology. And I do very much think that augmented reality will be the medium that we utilize most often when it comes to experiencing the metaverse. And that's because I believe it allows the most accessibility and the most movement, while also allowing the most hands-off integration. People don't have to seek out the metaverse if you're utilizing something that's augmented reality and that you're utilizing on a daily basis. The metaverse can seek you out, and I think that that's something that's very important. Because you can't force a person to put a VR headset on and then go walking through Disney World. That's not going to work. But if a person decides they want to go there on their own, what's brought to them without them deciding is much more favorable, I think, from a altered experience perspective. And I do really believe that in order for a metaverse to be successful, it has to be something that's not really thought about as much when it's accessed. And while we have different versions of that, we definitely have different variations and different versions of metaverses in terms of what's possible and in terms of how you would interact with said metaverse. But I think when we come back to the full-on 3D, self-enveloping, Ready Player One style metaverse, I don't really think that VR is going to be the end-all be-all for that. And I do very much think that because of our constant need to be in motion as a people, that we are going to gravitate toward augmented reality because it provides the best of both worlds. It provides an existing view of our reality while providing an augmented or additional experience over top of that. And it gives people the choice. It gives people the choice to choose what they want to focus on. You aren't focusing on one thing or another. You are choosing consciously if you want to pay attention to the now, to the reality, or to the metaverse, to the infinite lack of reality that exists. And I think that's very important. I think that the accessible medium, or the medium that we use to access said metaverse, is going to be just as, if not more important than the metaverse experience itself, because how it integrates with your daily life is extremely important to how it's adopted, how people utilize it, and obviously to its long-term success. So when I think about the metaverse and how we will access the metaverse, I don't really think about putting on a VR headset to transport myself to someplace else only where I am. I think about putting on an AR headset that allows me to transform my experience wherever I go. And I do very much think that the smart companies, the companies that are aware of this, are already positioning themselves. You can look at companies like Microsoft with the HoloLens AR headset, or you can look at things like Apple, who are working on their own augmented reality headset, or Snapchat, or the Vuzix AR glasses that are coming out later this year. It's obviously a very popular technology to be looked into right now, and I think the companies that are really forward-facing are positioning themselves to be prepared not for the VR revolution, but for the much larger AR revolution that comes immediately following that. Another great example is VeVe. They have a very different take on the classic collectibles mindset, on the classic collectibles experience, and they do so in a very much AR-based setting. And I do think that platforms like that are really going to be able to evolve nicely as those mediums that we utilize and the technology that we use to access those platforms improves. So if I had to choose between AR and VR, guys, I'm going AR. I think AR is the way here. I know this was a bit of a long-form video, a little bit of a self-opinionated video when it comes to the end specifically, but I really do feel like everything is moving toward augmented reality being the main medium, being the main experience that really bolsters all of these metaverses and makes them more than what we've seen before. Because again, we've seen VR already. We've seen what VR can do. We've also seen some of the limitations of VR, and I really do think that an augmented view of our current reality is much more appealing than a controlled view of someone else's developed reality. And so that is the reason why I think this is going to be the main catalyst. I do think that AR will be the main catalyst for metaverses. And I think until we hit a point where AR is accessible, we probably won't see metaverses as we know and love them really take off, or as we expect them to be. We won't really see them take off until that point. I know that if I had to choose between sitting in a room with a VR headset on or walking into a blank room that comes to life when I put on my AR glasses, I would choose the AR glasses because I can still see reality while also seeing things I know and love. And so I think we should start thinking about things like that. And I think this is kind of a discussion that was worth having now because I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on it and on what side of the fence you fall on in terms of whether or not you think VR is a requirement for a metaverse or you think the ultimate medium that we access it on will be AR, because that's my personal opinion, guys. But again, I want to hear your thoughts down below. So let me know what you guys think of this. If you guys like this video, make sure to smash that thumbs up button. I try to come up with unique concepts and unique ideas and concepts to discuss with you guys because I think these are the things that we're going to have to think about as time progresses and as these metaverse applications and experiences and platforms progress. So definitely let me know your thoughts there, guys. Other than that, guys, I want to thank you for checking out this video. Don't forget to comment on that last video I posted on Friday and get entered for that NFT giveaway, guys. I want to make sure you don't miss out on that. I hope you guys have a fantastic day. And until next time, we'll see you soon.